Right, the CDS UI session with Sarah. So the two topics, Sarah, we wanted to cover. One of them was about get attributes.
Yeah.
So let me explain. Okay, so get attributes, the way it works is there's two things that we want to achieve with get attributes. So you can see there's get attributes. In this case, it's defined in get attributes within resource component. Okay, within output, I should say.
Yeah.
So the way it works is that every variable that we have, we can define a either get input or get attribute. So in this case, we said that
can we get input inside the output?
Usually, what you can do that, but usually what would happen if it's get output, you would use get attribute. But you can also do get input if you want to. Okay. But the main idea is that even with input, okay, when things are being passed as attributes that are set as some, as input, for these things you can also use get input. You can use either get attributes or get input. So those are the main things that we use. And if you define get attributes, the way it works is that there's several different ways you can define it. And here it defines that for the component of resource assignment, I'm gonna get assignment params. So let me first show you the component definition. Okay, so where's the component? So we're gonna go to master under component folder. Each component has a definition. So let's see, definition types, started types, node types. Okay, let's take a look at the component. Okay, so we're gonna first look at resource resolution. If you look at resource resolution, you see there's the attributes, right?
Yeah.
So this component can support two types of get attributes. It supports assignment params or it supports assignment maps. Okay, so that means that if you have within your workflow, because this is a workflow step, right?
Yeah.
And it's called resource assignment. Resource assignment is a component, is using the component. So if I go down to node types, right? Let me just do this way. So if I close all of this, resource assignment is a type of component resource resolution, right? Because it's a type of resource resolution, within that workflow, you can use within output the get attributes of assignment params or assignment maps. Okay, that's one thing you can do. Okay, this is one use case. In addition, and you can see it's assignment params or assignment maps. So that's one use case. Okay, but you can also further define other things you can do. So let me just show you another example. Okay. Now, in here, we're using get attributes within the components. Okay, so the component has a bunch of parameters, and you're going to define get attributes to extract the target IP address, which is an attribute of the netcom device. Okay, and you can see in this case, it's using NF account collection. NF account collection, if you look at the node type definition, so if I close this, okay, here it is. It's a type of resource resolution component. Okay, because it's a type of resource resolution component, we can use either assignment params or assignment map. And we can say that for assignment params or assignment map, I want to retrieve the NF params in this case. So what is NF params? NF params is from a template store. It's the template itself. If you look at the NF params definition, so let's see. I'm gonna close this. You see here, this is the NF account collection.
Yeah.
NF account collection has an artifact of NF params here. So what it's going to retrieve is the content of NF params using get attributes. So what we're trying to say is that NF account collection can resolve many templates, okay? But what it's trying to do is retrieve the contents of NF params. In this, you can have other artifacts, right, within that are being resolved. But in our case, we only have one artifact prefix, which is NF params, and we're trying to retrieve it using get attributes. Okay, so this is another example. Okay, and this example, you see, it's being supported inside of the Netcom device.
So in the workflow level, I'm selecting the get attributes from the component attributes, and on the component level, I'm selecting from within the artifact file.
No, you can also do in the workflow. You can also do at the component level as well. Okay, so these are just different options we will have. Okay, so we can either say assignment params, or we can be very specific at NF param level, or you can even further go down, because what I want to say is that I can even say, instead of saying just NF params, I can create one more level, because NF params, what we truly want is not NF just params, okay? What we want is, if we look at NF params definition, there's a mapping file. So what we want to really expose is each of these parameters themselves as get attributes. Okay, so I may want to get to NF params level, but I may want to be even, I may want to just say I want a very specific attribute. This service instance ID in this case is a string, right? It's a primitive string. But in some cases, it can even be a complex object that I would want back.
But here I didn't define what I wanted from the NF param.
Right. In this case, I didn't define it, but I can also extend NF params not just to say I want all the attributes of NF params. I can say I want a very specific attribute of NF params.
So in this example, we targeting the attributes from the component itself, and
we're targeting the content, all the content of. So let me explain one more concept. If I look at you see there's a difference between assignment params and assignment map. Okay. Assignment params is really the content that is that's the mesh content that is being returned to us. So what I mean by mesh content is that if you look in the template section, right, you have the base config template, okay, here, and there's variables here. The mesh content is the thing that happens when the runtime parameters are substituted for all the variables that are marked here, and we generate a mesh template, okay, which is like a configlet. So it's very runtime specific. So get attribute would return the final mesh template or mesh content back itself. What assignment map does, assignment map is a little bit different because all it's doing is going to return a JSON object with every single variable that is resolved. So it's going to return a JSON of service instance ID and its value, VNF ID and its value, in a JSON format that user can select from. Any questions there? Or maybe you want to see an example?
Yeah, more of them.
Okay, so give me 1 second. Let me log into my other laptop and I'll show you an example.
Yeah, sure.
Give me 1 minute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. Okay, so what I want to do is close that. Okay, so here is some examples. So give me 1 second. Okay, let's leave it at this for now. Let me. I'm just waiting for Postman to come up now. It's taking a little bit longer than I expected. So let's give it a few minutes. It's taking so long. I don't know why.
Okay, maybe we can review again the previous example.
Okay, so let me go back here. This stuff again. Okay, so it's coming up. So let me explain again. Okay, and here you can see, right? We have resource assignment component, then we have assignment params, that's from the get attributes. And similarly, we have the same thing here, right? And here we have assignment map. So assignment params is the mesh template. It's the content we generate by taking the template and meshing it with the runtime instance parameters we resolve through resource resolution. Okay. Assignment map is something that we have as a JSON object of all the available parameters that it can be returned from resource assignment component for a group of templates or for a specific template. Now, what this is doing is returning as a group of templates, but it can also return things for a specific template if we wanted to, specify the node type that we're interested in. Okay, but sometimes that may not be necessary, but in some cases it may be necessary. So it all depends, right? It's very flexible framework itself.
But I'm still getting it from the component attributes. The assignment map.
Say it again.
I'm still getting the assignment map from the component attributes.
Yes, absolutely. This workflow, resource assignment, okay, is calling target resource assignment. That means within this resource assignment step is using the component of resource resolution. So I'll make available the in get attributes all for every component what the available attributes options are for a specific node. Okay, so in this case the node is resource assignment. It has the same as the workflow name, okay, but it's really resource assignment node. That's here, okay, and this is also resource assignment node, and this is also resource assignment node. Okay, so because I'm using the node, I have the options in output to get to do a get attributes of the values of that node itself. So let me show you one example of how this looks like. Oh,
So in this example, I cannot select the get attribute unless I have this function inside the workflow.
You cannot select the get attributes unless you have what?
For the actions, we can get the attributes from the custom attribute and one from the function. And for this input, output, I cannot select it unless I have this component.
Correct.
As a function? Okay.
Unless you have that component
in our workflow.
Is being referenced by a workflow.
Yeah.
Okay. So if let me load this blueprint. I'll show you the output of what it looks like. Good. So I'm calling resource assignment workflow. In my case, I'm using get input of VNF itself, but let me show you how the output looks. Okay. So you see data 1, right? And it's returning VNF. And for that VNF, it's going to return, okay. It's returning all the parameters, okay? And you can see it's returning it in a JSON format.
Yeah.
Right? In data, in resolve data, it's returning the same, it's similar thing, it's the content itself, okay? It's the mesh content of what we want, and it's returning everything in a string. So one is returning the mesh content that I have, and the other one is returning a JSON object of the variables that we that is represented in the assignment map. Okay, so the difference is that one is returning a string that is the content that I want, and the other one is returning a variable. So I can, so instead of, let's say, like here, I want to get maybe this value. Okay, let's say, let me go back here. And I will say assignment map. I will then say VNF. And I want to also say this. Let me just try this. Give me 1 second. And okay. So data 1, you see data 1 returns to me the specific item that I wanted now. It didn't give me the entire JSON of the VNF mapping. It gave me the JSON of the specific thing that I wanted under data 1. And the resolve data is still returning me the content itself. And one thing I want to emphasize here is that oh, here, right? what's being returned when we initially we didn't specify the VNF template is all the, where's the VNF mapping? Okay, here. So it's returning all the mapping parameters. All the mapping parameters, all these attributes is what's being returned to me in JSON format. Okay, itself. So that I want to emphasize on that point. So if I remove, in my case, if I remove assignment map again, and I reload it, reload it. Where is it? Okay. So what I wanted to emphasize is that it's returning things for the VNF, okay? And all the mapping based, it's in JSON format itself, okay? And the user can select any of these things, okay? So you see some of these things are right now mainly name value pairs, but you know what it could return is something like these things could also be a complex objects that I can return back. So it can also be that. So I just want to emphasize that on that point. And in this case, I'm returning, you know, the VNF specific template and mapping data, okay? But it can also be something else. It can be the VTNS specific data. So if let me see, I don't know if this will work, but I can, let's give it a shot. If I change this to be VTNS, I think some of it will fail because I'm not using the right service instance ID or something like that, but let's see what we get back. Okay, you see here the VNF parameter data. This is different. This is for VDNS. So
Yeah.
VDNS is a separate. Where is VDNS? Here, it's a separate mapping file, and it gives me VDNS specific parameter data. It won't give me the VNF parameter data will not be part of this. Okay, because we're using the option of get. We're using the option of get input. So everything is controlled by what the user, the VNF template that we are actually, executing is controlled by the user, right? If we were using, instead of get input, if we were specifying which mapping templates we were using, then we might get returned a grouping of different prefixes. Okay, it could be a combination of VPKG, VDNS, VNF, and base template, right? But since we're using get input, it's going to be one of these things that is being returned. So I wanted to also specify that the mapping data that is available to the user depends on the input that is either defined by the client, or it could be something that's predefined within the definition of that resource resolution node itself. Okay.
So
And
the user will have the two options to select in the same step.
can you repeat that again?
I mean, the user can get the attribute whether from the component attribute or maybe from the artifact file, template file.
That's right. He can go at the artifact level, or he can go at the leaf level within the artifact level, right? Or he can do it at just the node level itself. So there are various options that he can choose from. And you can see in some cases, if he's, some of these parameters could be name value pairs, some of these parameters could be complex objects. It really doesn't matter. It's what's being returned is based on the definition, either of which artifact the client wants to resolve as input, okay, or it could be something predefined. So what I'm trying to say is that in some cases, if I go back to this use case, let's go to resource resolution use case.
Mhm.
Okay, so in here, I cannot do, I cannot do like VNF, okay? Because if I do, since it's get input, in some cases, I don't, if it's get input, I may not be able to say which node, and I have multiple artifacts, right? Within get input in some cases.
Can I
In all
get
cases,
input
right? I
inside the
cannot
get
say
attribute?
this is guaranteed, because if my resource resolution is at VZNS level, then this thing will not work. Okay, it will fail. It will work only at the layer above for all the use cases, because we know for sure that it will it's not going to be just one template specific output. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure that we are on the same page of when this is applicable to be at the node level, and when this is applicable to be at the that higher level, I can say, or lower level of artifact.
Can you switch back to the deep level?
The deep level?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where to select a specific
Here is an example.
yeah.
Okay, see here they define the deep level. It's very easy to, in this case it's NF params, okay, but it's very easy to do that because what I'm trying to say is that NF account collection has only NF params, so they can say that it's NF params. But if you have multiple things, then you may not be able to say NF params and the specific value. Okay, this is only applies if you have the mapping predefined as part of. You see here, it's predefined what the artifact is.
Mm-hmm.
So I can, if I say, ABC 1, 2, 3, so I can do get attributes from either NF params IP, or I can predefine it to be as ABC 1, 2, 3 IP as well. Okay. But if it's get input, then I won't be able to use either NF params or ABC123 because I don't know what sequence this thing will be resolved itself. So I want to say that I want to expose that lower level of NF params whenever it's predefined, right? And if it's get input, then I think the only thing we can do is expose assignment map and assignment attribute, which is at node level get attribute itself. If we want to go at the artifact level, then the artifact level should be predefined. I think that's what we should do. Okay, and when we predefine it, we have two options. We can either do NF params at the artifact level, or we give the user the option to go even lower than the artifact level to a specific leaf level of within the artifact level based on the mapping variables that are predefined.
But the node should be exist before.
Say it again.
The node should be selected before I get to the artifact name.
Yes. So the node has to be selected. Absolutely. In this case, the node is NF account collection.
And I cannot get the NF params until I select the NF account collection.
That's correct.
Okay, but the NF account collection is containing the NF params. Well, am I getting correct that we are duplicating the the
You're duplicating.
value? I see that the NF account collection has the NF params value, but I'm selecting it again. I see that
That's correct. Okay, so why are we doing this? Okay, so the reason we're doing so what happens in our workflow before we can execute a netcomp device, we need to get the IP of that devices first. So that means that I have to execute netcomp collection first,
Mhm.
which is resource resolution, and then only then I will be able to execute the netcomp device because the netcomp device requires a variable, right? It's dependent on a variable that I can only get if I execute resource resolution. So
Mhm.
resource resolution is always going to be executed first, followed by the netcomp device execution. So if you look
But
at
sorry,
that specific step,
okay.
let me just share the steps that we execute. Give me 1 minute. Here, it's the config deploy. Okay, first config deploy execute NF account collection.
Mhm.
Okay, and then it would execute which is netcomp. So it's a two-step workflow that's being executed.
Yeah.
And then it's done. And what happens is that by executing this component first, that component data will be available to you know uh, your second component that's being executed
Mhm.
using get attributes.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions?
No, it's good.
Okay, and so the main thing I wanted to say, assignment map is the JSON. And if the artifacts are predefined, then you can go at the leaf level of that artifact. And the leaf level means that it's from a mapping. So let me
And
open
that's for the mapping only?
again. Hopefully it doesn't take long. So I was trying to get to the point is that we want to expose the get attributes for the component level attributes or for workflow attributes, okay? From from output or input level, okay? You can also use get input as well. See here, get input in this case is used for example prefix, but you can also use get input, okay, and its resolution key. So, and get input is basically is used at the component level. And I want to say for get input, it's all the inputs that are exposed in what do you call it, in the workflow section. Okay, so you can see if I go all the way up in config assign action. Where's config assign? Config assign here. You see we have resource resolution key and config assign properties. So we use get input to get the resolution key in that case. Get input. Here. Get
But in the
input
workflow
resolution key.
again,
Resolution key is It's the same thing, okay? But it's a workflow input.
I see that the resolution key was within the function, and I get it in the action according to the function, not the. You mentioned that it depends on the workflow, but I see it depends on the function first.
So what I want to say is that the get input is the inputs that are available from the workflow. Okay, so if you look at config assign workflow, the two options we have is resolution key or config assign properties. I can add any other input. When I expose those inputs should be
But the
available
resolution
at
key
the
is from the
component
function
level,
itself.
at the function level, right?
Yeah, okay. So first I have to have, again, I have to have the function to select this attribute inside the action.
First, you have to have the function
Yeah,
for get input.
yeah. You mentioned that we have this resolution key inside the inputs of a workflow,
Yes.
and I see that it's coming from the function itself, not from the function, the action.
No, the input is coming from the get input is coming from the attributes that are available from the workflow actions.
Mm.
So this is the input from the workflow action of config assign.
And in the action itself or the workflow itself, where I get it? From where I get the resolution key and the action. Can you go up to the workflow?
Yeah. Here we are.
Yeah. So the resolution key inside the inputs, where I get it?
Yes, it's at workflow level.
Yeah, okay. From where I get the resolution key?
It's input. It's passed by the users.
Yeah, but I get it from where?
You're getting at the workflow level.
Yeah, I see, but where I select the resolution key?
Where do you select the resolution key as part of the input definition?
Yeah,
It could be from the component itself.
yeah, that's what I
Yes,
mean.
yes, you're right.
Yeah, okay.
Right. It could be from a component, or it could also be a custom thing as well. Okay, so those are the two use cases we have.
Yeah, but this is the same one I have in the function. It's not a custom attribute.
Right. So first, the expectation is that the users will create the steps, right?
Yeah.
After he creates the steps, right, he binds the workflow and he binds the components. Then he defines what are the inputs that he's selecting within his component within his workflow, and then he also can further specify how those inputs will be resolved using get input or get attributes as well. So that's an additional step that he does. So what else did I want to show you?
The delete the template I'm mapping.
Hold on one second.
Uh,
Let me see here. So any questions on, first of all, get attributes?
no, it's okay.
Okay, then we want to talk about delete option, right? Of template and mapping?
Yeah.
Okay. So any questions on get attribute itself?
No.
Get input? Okay, if anything comes up, Sarah, let me know. We can always further discuss it. But the main idea is that get attributes is either return you the mesh content, or it can return you a very specific set of variables, runtime variables for a component or for a workflow output. Let me just say one more thing for get attributes, okay? We just covered for resource assignment get attributes, but there could be also other get attributes that are not for resource assignment. And here you can see there's get attributes for response data, okay? And this is get attributes for execute health check. So let's take a look at execute health check. It's using the script component. So if you look at script component, let me look in ONAP, okay, the script component will have also attribute definition there.
Mhm.
And I want to just show you that definition, okay? So CDS here. Script component. Okay, if you look at here, you can see this is script component and has an attribute of response data, right?
Yeah.
So because that workflow of health check is using execute health check, which is a component of script executor, in the output of health check, it can do a get attributes of response data.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you can have other components also have, maybe remote Python. You see, remote Python has get attributes of status, prepare environment logs, and all this other stuff, right? So it can expose get attributes of this information. So the main idea is that we want the get attribute to be returned at the component level you see here, make that available. But it can also make, if it's resource resolution, then it's not just the component level get attribute, it could be a very specific leaf level attribute for a given artifact to a specific leaf element as well. If the artifact is exposed with the for a specific node and artifact itself. Okay, if it's get input, then we want to expose it at a higher level. Okay, for workflow. If it's not get input, if it's just the predefining what the artifact we're using for resource resolution, then you can even specify it at the leaf level. So you go node leaf, artifact dot leaf level
So
parameter.
that's only on resource resolution case.
Yep. Here's resource resolution. And you see we have assignment params and we have assignment map. In case the user selects assignment map, we want to make sure that assignment map makes available not just this node level parameter, but the leaf level parameter, because it can go to the artifact and then it can go to the leaf element that we want to retrieve data from. So let's go one more time and see the attributes here. You can see here the NF account collection, assignment map. This should really be like this: NF params, okay, which is the artifact, and then it will be like this. Okay, today we can represent it in two forms, like you see here, NF params.ip, but I think it might be easier for us to represent it in this form as well. Just NF params, which is the artifact, and then within the mapping file, We know what are all the available options, so we allow the users to select from those options. So what I'm envisioning is that in the UI itself, we should make the user, not have to look up the mapping data. We know what the mapping data is. We should allow the user, if the artifact is predefined, and they're trying to say, what is the get attribute for, let's say, target IP address or some other thing, some other property within the component, then we should allow the user to give them the option of all the available things for that specific node within that specific artifact or leaf element property itself. It should be something that very easily selectable. Maybe we do something very similar like you have in the template store, template and mapping store, where all the available different prefixes, and here all the available variables that the user can select for these specific attributes.
And it won't be accessible or enabled unless I have the artifacts.
Can you repeat that, Sarah?
This option won't be enabled unless I have the artifacts.
Unless you have you're using resource resolution component, right? And then your definition of your artifacts is not get input. It's really a predefined artifact. If it's a predefined artifact, then what we want to make sure we expose is the leaf level get attribute resolution. Okay, if it's like get input, then you can allow the users to do get attributes at that node level, meaning that they can do a assignment map or assignment attributes, but it cannot go below the node level because we don't know which artifact will be executed, so we cannot predefine, get attributes of, something. So we have to leave it at the node level. If it's predefined, then you can take it lower and give the user an option to select from get attributes for this specific artifact, and for those specific artifacts, what are the different, mapping file values they can select from or attributes they can select from. That's something we can, allow the users to view.
So he can select only from the mapping files, not the template files, only the mapping.
Only the mapping files, correct. We don't care about template files in this use case, only the mapping files, and truly just the list of JSON properties that they can select from. That's all we want to expose to the user that they can select from.
So I'll have the option. So I have a scenario or for this section that the user can select. Will have the option to select from the list of attributes within this node, or to give him the option to select which mapping file from the artifact section, and he can select on the top level of the mapping files, or maybe he can get into this tree and select one of the attributes within this mapping file.
That's absolutely correct. That's exactly that. Those are the use cases.
It won't be enabled unless I have the mapping files in the artifact section.
Unless you have the mapping files predefined.
Yeah.
You're not using the get input. If you're using get input, then the only thing we can really expose is just assignment map and assignment attributes. Okay, assignment params, I should say. Those are the two things we'll expose. But if it's specific predefined artifact, then you can go at the artifact level or at the leaf level of a specific artifact.
Yeah.
All right. So, and you expose for all other use cases, right? You're exposing whatever the component is exposing of get attribute is, right? like we talked about script executor itself.
Yeah.
All right. So any other questions, Sarah, on that specific option?
No, I get the point, the idea.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So now what we wanted to discuss is the delete, right? The delete artifact and mapping itself. So slow. I think I have to restart my laptop.
First, I have one question for the template prefix selection.
Yeah.
This is the difference between the template prefix and the template name. By selecting the template name, this is automatically looking for this template name and get the template or mapping or post automatically. And for the template prefix, I can select from this template whether the template or the mapping. So
It should be the same. So when we say template name is really it should be the base config, okay?
Yeah.
Or VF module. It should remove the dash template from here. We shouldn't have dash template. It should be just the name that is without that that suffix that we have here of dash template or dash mapping.
Yeah, okay. But in the prefix name, I can select maybe from the base config, I can select the template or the mapping or both.
So in here, the only thing you want to expose is just the name. You don't want to expose the template or the mapping, okay? The user should only see the name, and once he selects the name, he'll get whatever is in the template store, the template and mapping.
This is the
Just
template
the
prefix.
Say it again.
This is in the template prefix section option.
Template. So this is the name, whatever we're calling it, right? Here you select the template name.
Okay.
So the name should only be the name without the dash template and dash mapping.
Okay.
Once you select that name, we will take whatever is in the store. If in the store it has template and mapping, we select both. If it has template only, we'll select that. Or if it has mapping only, we'll select that.
So what is the difference between the template name and the template prefix of the selection? I know that the template name is automatic response and the template prefix is the manual, but I can't see any difference between them in the interface and the selection.
Okay, so maybe we can, let's just define what things are, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so you might have something like base config slash mapping .json, base config slash template .json. Okay,
Mhm.
so that JSON, I should say slash template .json and slash mapping .json. We can call these things as what? A suffix, right? Suffix is base config. We can call this as template name itself.
Mhm.
Any other use cases you have? So this could, so we can just leave it at that.
Okay. What about the prefix? The template prefix.
Well, this is the same thing right here. This is the prefix basically, which is the base config, right? So it's the thing that comes before this dash template and the dash mapping.
Okay.
So my point was that the user should only see this, right? When he selects the base config, if the template store has both template and mapping, that's what we're creating. If this template store has just template, he will select template. If he has just mapping, then we select mapping, just mapping itself. Any questions on that?
No, can you repeat this last point about the
Okay,
selection?
so we will look in the template store. So here's our template store, right?
Yeah.
Let's say if it's base config, right? If the user selects base config,
He will get the mapping and the
store
template
has
file.
both base config mapping and base config template. That's what we will define in the artifact section.
Yeah. Okay.
If he selects, let's say, VZNS, okay, because VZNS we have only VDNS mapping, then we only select VDS mapping in the definition. In we don't. There is no VDNS template here.
Okay.
Okay, and that's it. There could be a use case where it's just a template name without a mapping, but that's a rare use case. So if it's just a VPKG template, let's say, and we select VPKG, then we'll select VPKG in the artifact definition itself.
I'm still confused about. I see both are the same meaning.
What's the same?
The selection, even you just mentioned that the prefix, the template name is the template prefix, and in this case you mentioned that I'm getting what inside the store.
Okay, so what we don't want to happen, for example, if the user selects VPKG, we don't want to define a template artifact if it doesn't exist, right?
Okay.
Okay,
So
that
I
we
just
don't want.
selecting the template name, and the process is automatically responds to the selection. And this is the same for the post option.
Yes, it's the same for both options.
So why do we split it on the screen?
Why do we? You repeat
We
that
have
again?
we define these as the two options in our screen. Let me get back to the screen. Hello?
Yep, go ahead.
Can you go back to the screen where I'm selecting the template name or the
Yep,
template
here.
prefix? No, the form itself.
Which
Before,
one?
the screen before this one.
Before this one?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah, this is for the artifact prefix name. I see that both options we have here, the user can select from, are the same process.
It's the same process. You're absolutely right. The only thing that difference is that what we define in the artifact definition itself. So if you look
The
here,
template name, it just give me only the templates, not the mapping files.
no.
Okay.
The main difference is that you see here, the artifacts prefix is going to be predefined in one use case, and in another use case, we're gonna use get input here, get input. That's the main difference.
So
But the artifact definition here, you can see is defined, right? What are the options of artifacts you want to use within this component? But it's going to be set as get input, or it's going to be predefined like we have in the other use case. Here, in this case, it's base config, and it's just
in
a
this case,
specific artifact.
so in this case, I can select for this part we have now. I can get the attribute. I don't know, the template prefix, and always select the base config.
Not always select base
It's
config.
whether
You can select any of the. So one option will allow them to select predefined what are the templates or mappings that are going to be predefined. Okay. The other option is to say we're going to use get input, but tell me what are the applicable template and mapping files, and we select from this list. So are you saying you want to rename this instead of saying template name and template
I
prefix?
see it's only one option. I just select the template without defining either the template name or the template prefix. My point here is that I see that we have options for the same scenario.
Right. The difference is one is gonna predefine what artifacts will execute as part of this component. The other use case is gonna allow the user to pass the artifact prefix name. That's the main difference. The option of selecting what is the the template name, what we're calling, right, or the prefix is the same. The main difference is one is a predefined and the other one is input driven template prefix. Maybe you want to change, instead of calling it template name and template prefix, maybe we should call it predefined template versus input driven templates.
Okay.
That could make things a little bit more clear.
Yeah.
Okay. But what you have here is perfect. Like, I mean, we want to expose a user a screen that will allow him to select from the template store for both options. And it's just the type of JSON we're creating. It's either going to be get input or just predefine what those artifacts are.
Mhm.
Okay, now once the user selects them, I think what we talked about is the delete option, right?
I think we can split them on the artifacts as we have in the file, the JSON file. So, we will give the user the option to delete any one of them.
But we're gonna display them here, like base config, right? Without the template. Base config will have template and mapping, and then you said we're gonna delete it. We can delete either the template or the mapping, or both. Delete the entire base config itself. That means deleting whatever is in template store.
Yeah, that was my scenario, but I only have one option to delete them both at the same time. But in our case now, I see we can. I don't know if we need to split them in two lines to define this. This is the template file and this is a mapping file, or maybe I can make like a accordion panel that includes that the title will be the base config, and inside of it we will define the template and the mapping files, and the user can delete any of them or both in the same time.
I'm thinking that for now, maybe we just have one option for delete, and you delete whatever you selected from the template store. So this way, you don't need to delete two files. You can just delete that, that as a group, whatever you have for base config.
So you are saying that we wanted to give it the option to delete in one both files in one step, or
Yes.
okay. So by deleting the base config, it will delete the mapping and the template file.
That's right.
Okay, so I will keep it the same as we have it now without any changes.
Right, right. Let's do that. You know, if there's a need later on to make it a little bit more flexible, right, we'll do that. But for now, I think it should be good to do it at the group level. I don't see a reason why we need to
Just that
at
we
the instance
haven't
level itself.
put in the JSON file. The user can go and delete them, or maybe one of them.
If he wants to go to the view and change, you know, a source view and change it, he can always do that, of course.
This will be only his option.
Right.
Okay, I think I'm good now with the points we need to discuss. One last thing that Ahmed Rizk will be our front-end developer who will join us for the designer screens. I will send him the invitation to tomorrow's meeting. He will join us for 2 days per week. I think we can discuss that when which day he. I think we need to define which day he will be with us. I will send him the Rock Chat channel and the configuration, and he will join us tomorrow in our meeting.
Okay, so he's gonna be with us only, his work on CDS is only 2 days a week, right?
Yeah,
Okay, that's very good.
but I think we. Do you think we can discuss it during our meeting today, tomorrow, or after the meeting? To
No,
get
we should
an update
discuss
on
it
what.
during the meeting, what you will work on next, right? I think for now, if we can get, you know,
He will need to get a work through of the CDS as a general idea.
right. But I think for now, what I'll ask him to do is the steps definition itself.
But he will work on the interface without knowing the business.
No. We want to definitely, you know, make sure he understands, right?
Yeah.
Before he gets started. But all I'm trying to say is that the steps workflow here is probably where we want to start.
Okay.
Okay, so anything else, Sarah?
No, that's okay.
All right,
Fine.
very great. I'll send out the recording once it's available.
Yeah, please.
It's gonna probably take some time because it's long.
Yeah.
All right, but I'll send it out hopefully by today.
Sure. Thank
All
you
right,
for your time.
thank you again, Sarah. Bye.